Hi all, this is attorney Maria Baler from the law firm of Samuel, Sayward and Baler in Dedham, Massachusetts. Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the estate settlement process, which is the process we go through with clients when a family member or other loved one passes away and we need to assist them with settling the estate and distributing the assets or administering the trust if there is a trust involved. So like I said, this is a process. The first step in the process is typically to determine what assets the deceased person owned at the time of their death and what their value was. That's important for a couple of reasons. First of all, we want to know how the assets are owned so we can determine whether we need to do a probate proceeding in Massachusetts, which is required if the deceased person owned assets in their individual name, in which case we have to have a personal representative appointed to represent the estate in order to get access to those assets. We also want to know how much the assets were worth at the date of death, as that will tell us whether we need to file a federal estate tax return if the assets were over $11.5 million in value in 2020, or if they were over $1 million in value, we would need to file a Massachusetts estate tax return. Once we determine what the assets were, how they were owned, and how much they were worth, we want to know if the deceased owed any debts or had any other expenses that needed to be paid. Creditors in Massachusetts have a year from the date of death to come forward and make claims against an estate or a revocable trust. So we want to identify what creditors are out there and what potential debts need to be paid. Another important creditor that we can't forget about are the tax authorities, the IRS and the Department of Revenue. So it's important for the family to understand what tax filings are required. There will be final personal income tax returns for the deceased. There may be an estate tax return, as I mentioned. There may be fiduciary income tax returns that need to be filed by the estate or the trust if those entities had income producing assets. Once we determine all tax filings that are required and file and pay any taxes that are due, and before we can distribute assets, we might need to look at whether there was any real estate in the estate or in the trust that will be sold, or if it won't be sold, are there any liens that have attached to those properties that need to be released? There is an automatic lien that attaches when someone passes away until the Massachusetts estate tax is either paid or an affidavit is filed that states that no taxes are due. There may also be a lien against the property if the deceased person received mass health benefits during their lifetime, so that lien will have to be dealt with as well. Finally, we can look at distributing the assets from the estate and look at the instructions in the will or the trust and figure out who the assets are going to. Are they going outright? Are they being held in trust for some period of time? And when should those distributions take place? So, like I said, it's a process. We like to say that estate settlement is a marathon and not a sprint. It's understandable that the family or the deceased's loved ones want to get this process going and want to move it along as quickly as possible to put this behind them. But we do have certain time frames we need to adhere to: the creditor's claims period of 1 year, the estate tax filing deadlines of 9 months. There might be some post-death tax planning we want to do that has to be done within that 9-month period. So all of these things need to be evaluated and done in the right order so that the fiduciaries, the personal representative of the estate or the trustee of the trust, has done things properly. They have no lingering liability to the beneficiaries or to creditors for anything that might have been handled improperly, and they'll be discharged and released of their duties when things are all done, and everyone will walk away hopefully happy and free of any issues. So this estate settlement process is a big part of our practice. We help clients with this on a daily basis. It's not something we talk about a lot, but it's an important thing for people to know about. If you have any questions about settling an estate, or if you have questions about what your family might need to do when you pass away, we're happy to talk to you at any time about these or other issues relating to estate settlement or trust administration, so give us a call. Thanks.